on.
Can we call?
And if we went, and it's what, 40 minutes? What's that?
Can we call the meeting to order?
Yes. All right, so I'm calling the meeting to order. We have 3 members present. That's a quorum. We've had our discussion before we went on as to how we would go about getting this recorded. The topic, really, this is meant for one really topic tonight. That's the Kamali Solar proposal for Plat 2, Lot 73. This project is going before the town, before the planning board on May 5th. So we called a special meeting of the Conservation Commission so that we could have some more exchange back and forth with the applicants. We had some of that in a site walk, and they were going to come back to us with more stuff. And I think they've come up with some more stuff on their own that they're working on anyway. So
yeah,
I know we have some general topics. I listed the majority of them on the agenda. Brownfields, limited disturbance, wetlands, easements, ownership, tree cutting, vegetation, roads and trails, solar performance, fence decommissioning, reforestation, and other. So if the applicants to the adjacent, let me see, oh, Lydia's on now too.
Jason.
So anyway, if Jason or Colleen, if you have a little bit of a presentation that you want to do, you know, that may be the most efficient. If not, I've got, you know, those broad categories. We can just work our way down through that list and have some exchanges. What would you like to do?
Yeah, you know, if you want to just work
Jason?
down the list, and I can answer, happy to answer questions.
Okay. All right, let's start with the brownfield. One of the questions I have right off the bat is there's an awful lot of small junk out there. I mean, the reason that small junk is I'm sure they couldn't easily pick it up. Is there some method? There must be thousands of things there. Is there some method to kind of sift through that soil in some manner and separate that stuff out of there? Or what's your thoughts and plans for that?
Well, at this stage, master plan, I mean, that's a kind of a construction level detail, so we haven't got into that yet, but I'm sure it'll be cleaned up as it's needed for construction.
All right, so let me just follow. I'll follow that. I'm sorry, go ahead. Who was that? All right, I'll go ahead and ask just a kind of a follow-up question. Do you know of any method that could be used to separate that out in a reasonable manner that exists out there in the world? I'm
sure they could. Yeah, I mean, they could screen it. You know, they're gonna have to clear the site to prepare it anyway. So obviously they're.
So for screening it, is that amount to scooping it up and putting it into screen, and you're going to separate out the gravel as well as that stuff, so to speak? Or I'm just curious what the capabilities, you know, what would possibilities are
That's a possibility.
tying you down to realize that you're saying you want to deal with this at the preliminary. I'm assuming,
right,
right, and not at master plan.
That's right. We're at a very early stage, so.
So anybody else jump in any time in here? Otherwise, I've kind of list. I'm just going to walk through it so I can get to my birthday dinner.
I got a question. Bobby, I got a question on the brownfield. What guarantees do we have that these people are going to do that? They can say all they want, but what guarantees do we have?
Yeah.
Is there any? Just a question.
Gary, we can recommend to the planning board that they determine whether or not all of this stuff needs to be cleaned out of there. Right. And then if it is, who the engineer, what standard they're going to work it to, or something. So that might be an open-ended recommendation to the planning board to address that issue at the appropriate time.
Right. And that's in the town council decision as well, that, we're required to comply with the Rhode Island DEM regulations. So the Rhode Island DEM remediation regulations and solid waste regulations
Okay.
have jurisdiction over all of this. So, again, we're really early at this point. But at some point, if, depending on what's found out there, then the Rhode Island DM regulations would kick in and we'd have to comply with those. So that's something that's already in place.
So you
So
have
are you,
assessed what is there? No one's looked to see what is in the brownfield? Is it metal fragments, oil, what? Do we
There's
know?
been, right, yeah, no, there's been no subsurface investigation at the site yet.
Okay, thank you. That's,
well,
yes,
just from walking the property, what I saw was a lot of stuff, wood chip size, 3, 4, 5 inches long max. A lot of it a lot smaller than that. That was pieces of plastic, pieces of metal, and glass.
mhm.
And of those, I'm happiest with the glass probably because that's pretty inert.
Yeah,
But,
the plastic is what we have to worry about, really.
so, and we don't know. So that would be another part of our recommendation planning board, maybe to find out what DM's typical requirements. Do they make you actually remove that kind of material? And maybe we're jumping the gun anyway, because I'm thinking what we need to know is what level of actually considering it to be a contaminated brownfield kind of area or potentially contaminated, what kind of site investigations are going to be required. Is I don't know all of these terms, but you have these kind of phase 1, phase 2 type of things that have to be done. I would ask the applicant, what do you think would be a requirement of DM to look at this site, or for the planning board? I'm assuming you're saying DM has the real authority here more than the planning board to decide how this needs to be investigated.
That's right. So the general process, just generally speaking, not necessarily the site, is if phase 2 is done, some samples are collected and tested. If the concentrations exceed reporting limits, then there's an obligation to report those concentrations to Rhode Island DEM, Office of Waste Management. Once it's reported to them, then they'll determine what additional investigation is needed. So let's say, just for example, 3 samples were collected, one of them had reportable concentrations. DM might require additional testing around that one sample to try to determine, what the extent of that contamination is. They're looking for enough information to then be able to support a remedial action, or to the issue and what remediation is right or not. But once reported on DM, then they really have control over how many samples are taken, what we're testing for, where we're testing. And then the next step would be, if remediation is required, developing a remedial action work plan. And Rhode Island DEM reviews that, and we work with them until they approve what the remediation is.
Okay.
And I had maybe one last thought or question. That area is, it looks like it's pretty poor soil. I imagine, I wouldn't doubt that a lot of this, if there was topsoil there, a lot of it got removed, possibly when they were cleaning up the site. I don't know how they went about doing that once they got the majority of the junk vehicles and stuff off of there. The ground might have been a lot more cluttered looking than it is now, and they might have come in and scooped up 6 inches of soil or something. But will there likely be something like topsoil brought in to grow the grass, so to speak, that you're going to have there?
Yeah, so that's also another different Office of Rhode Island DM, but Office of Water Resources, they require 4. Lately, they've been asking for 6 inches of topsoil. So,
okay. Does anybody else got any questions on the brownfield?
No, okay.
All right, let's move to the wetlands. So that northern detention basin that is right now scheduled to be the only detention basin, I mean, is this going to be kind of a shallow thing with wildflowers and stuff in it? I didn't get a good chance to look at the, I had the smaller plans, and I've been seeing the detention basins these days that are much more friendly looking. You know, they used to be these big horrible looking
Let me see if I can get it to pull.
things that were fenced in, and so is this going to be a nice looking something there that's with wildflowers and such, or what's that detention basin going to look like?
Yeah, it's like an anything. It's about a foot too deep. It's so shallow. I mean, you almost wouldn't notice there's a detention basin there unless you're looking for it.
Okay.
And yeah, I mean, and the grass seed will be, you know, a grass seed that's suitable for growing in a detention basin.
Okay, and the majority of the water is going to run off to the south, and there's no detention basin there. And you're saying that you meet DEM's requirements because there's already considerable runoff going in that direction. I believe that's pretty much a summary of what your understanding is. Am I correct on that, Jason?
That's right. That's right.
Right. So, yeah, I'm just wondering down at that end, is it makes sense even if DM does not directly require it? We're close to, you know, to do something like a rain garden or something to intercept the sheet flow, give it a chance to be cleaned up some more. I mean, once you leave the existing limits of disturbance, the area down below there is still disturbed. You know, it's been construction. There's not a lot of growth to the south where the water is going to be traveling. It's, you know, it's still on Unit 2 down to the you know, the southern boundary of Unit 2. Is that area going to be treated and nice grass and everything there to help intercept and separate out and help get some more of that water to go into the ground?
Yeah, so a couple of things. Yes, it will be grass. I mean, even the disturbed areas is on the master plan is slated to be seeded.
Would this be all the way down to the at least the southern boundary of Unit 2, wherever the water is actually draining?
Yes, within the limits of disturbance, which is also the area that's draining. And then also I'll add.
Is that all the way? I'm sorry. Is that all the way
Yeah.
down to the you know, the south end of Unit 2, or is it going to stop somewhere? And to me, all of that area is disturbed, but it's, you know, it's not being disturbed by this project. I mean, it's already disturbed.
Well, it'll extend to the limits of disturbance, but
South.
Well, I know what you're saying.
Limits of disturbance.
Yeah, no, I know what you're saying. Between the limits of disturbance and the rest of Unit 2, that small little piece, there's not any water flowing from the proposed work to that area.
Okay.
So that's kind of a separate drainage.
So it's already getting into a drainage system somewhere before that. I mean, if it's not flowing through that area, it's got to be going someplace.
Right. Right.
And it's heading off to the western wetlands? Yes. Okay. Right. All right. Okay. So, all right. That answers my question. Thank you. Does anybody else have questions on wetlands? The next item I had was the tree cutting. And maybe this is where you could do some screen sharing. Could you kind of walk us through where all the trees are being cut? It was when I was after the site walk, I was trying to particularly envision what was happening at the south end on both the east and west sides, because you've got that big granite hill, and then you've got all the way over to the fencing was right at the very edge of the wetlands, the 50-foot perimeter wetlands, I believe.
Yeah, I can share my screen and show you that. Let's see, I'm going to need the host to enable me to share my screen.
Okay, 1 second.
Next to your share screen, there should be a like an up arrow.
Oh, yeah.
And if you click that, there's an
Okay.
option to enable participants to share the screen.
Wait a
Don't
minute.
touch anything.
Just make it big so you see more people. Oh, here's the view.
Can you share
I don't
now?
want them to see me.
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
You want it, all right, that's all the people that
The
are in.
host can also mute other participants if you would like.
Okay. There we go.
Right, you should be able to see the screen, right? The
There we go.
lens right now? Okay.
They can't see me.
You want me to put you on?
No,
Oh,
they can't see me, right?
let me just wait.
No, Joe, we can't see you, but we can hear you.
Okay, so I'll zoom in a little. So this is the landscape plan that was submitted. This line, can you see my hand?
Mhm.
Yes.
Okay, all right.
No problem.
So this is the existing tree line
All right.
right here. And this is the fence. So all the area that's hatched in here with the plus signs, those are trees that will be cleared, and then the array will go here and that'll be replanted with grass. And then outside the fence, shade trees will be cut, but not grubbed. The undergrowth remains, and then that anything that does happen to get disturbed is replanted with a restoration mix. And then this area all in here, this is already grass.
Okay.
And so going up the hill, up onto that granite hill to
Up
the
here.
south.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's going to be cut right on up to at least to the top, right? To get your sunlight in.
Right.
Okay, and then up on the north end, where your detention basin is going, and you're right up against the wetlands, you're going to clear right up to the 50-foot perimeter. Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, there's a tree line here too. Zoom in on that.
Mhm.
And so there is one stretch around here where we're pretty much up against the perimeter wetland.
And can just to understand it, can you show us where the water is the water that goes to that detention basin, how it's going to get over to the wetland? Is there a culvert there?
Switch to the drainage plan. So this detention basin here is collecting water from about this part of the site. And then there's going to be, we don't even need a pipe here. There's just going to be a small spillway.
Okay.
And that's just going to flow overland.
Which way is it going to go?
It flows this way towards the wetlands.
And then is it going to take a right there and go east?
It
Or is
goes
it
pretty
gonna
much
go
north. It
west?
just goes pretty much straight.
All right, and then at the water from there, which way does it flow now? I don't see the contours.
This flows to the east.
Oh, to the east.
The
Okay.
wetland flows to the east, yeah.
Okay, that's what I didn't remember, whether there was actually a culvert somewhere underneath the little road we walked down, and it was going to flow to I thought it was maybe going to flow to the wetlands to the west. Okay.
No, they're two separate.
Okay.
Yeah, no, this
Okay.
wetland
separate
flows to the
wetlands.
east. Yeah, and then
Okay.
this wetland flows down to the south, and then
Okay.
there's a culvert There's a culvert beneath the road over here.
Okay. Then especially down in that south end, what materials are going to be removed? You were saying when we were out there that you're going to, some of those, there's some outcroppings down there now that you're going to have to take down to be able to put the panels up, because I'm sure it's got to do with the steepness or something.
That's right.
So like how much material is going to come off the site down there? Are we talking about 50 truckloads or something? I'm just trying to get some concept of how much that topography is going to change right down there.
Yeah, that's something that hasn't been totally ironed out yet. But yeah, this hill needs to be really flattened out a lot so that to accommodate the panels. So that'll be this part. I think this part of the hill, if you remember from our site walk,
Yeah.
is essentially going to look like the parts of the north of it that has already been worked. Right. You remember the area before we got to the hill to the north of it where it was flattened out and kind of cleared up.
And
So that's kind of going to have to extend.
There were
to the
some
rest
blocks
hill
of
as well.
stone sitting there. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So that's not quite figured out, but there's a good bit of material there that's going to be, I assume, removed from the site or put elsewhere. I'm not necessarily saying it's got to go away. I just wanted to understand what's up.
Yeah. At this point, I think it's going to be removed, but yeah, that's something that's still being worked out.
Right. And when the town council set the conditions, there was in there about the native species around the PSES are to be sustained. I'm not quite sure what that means. What do you consider that to mean? What are you? How are you going to address that condition?
I don't have that in front of me. I can open that up if you give me a second. This is the advantage of Zoom meetings, being able to open things I don't have with me. Okay, which condition are you referring to?
I didn't write down the condition number.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry, I didn't think to do that. But it just said that one of the conditions of the native species around the photovoltaic energy system are to be sustained. And I didn't really know what that discussion might have led to in the past with the town council. What's the expectation there? I'm assuming to sustain the native species, you first got to identify what's there so that you can sustain it. Would that make sense?
I'm not seeing that specific condition quickly, but the area outside the fence, the existing ground cover remains, right? So the shade trees are cut, whatever's there, the existing vegetation that's there now, that remains.
Yeah, I don't know.
So
if they were
that's
thinking,
what's being preserved.
Yeah, I don't know if they were thinking animals or plants or probably both, but it just was a requirement, and I didn't understand what was intended, and I was trying to get Barbara Capalbo's on that was on that town council, but maybe Barbara knows what she intended.
I don't remember that particular requirement. I know we talked about that you'll be using native species. We talked about protecting native animals, but I don't think it's part of the requirements. I would assume they would do that anyway, but that would be something that DEM and the foresting or the reforestation or the outside ground planting would do. We talked about doing meadows or native plants, but that wasn't, I don't think it was a requirement. Okay. I don't remember that as such. I could be wrong, but I don't remember that.
Yeah, I'm not seeing it.
Okay.
All right, so then my last question on that whole category, I guess, was I was trying to still understand the ground cover and the permeability within the fence area. So a lot of the sites we've had with solar, we've been after the applicants to scarify because of the compaction and stuff. Maybe this is a different kind of soil here that you know, is more gravelly or something, maybe that's not as much of a problem. And you said that you would probably think the standard is probably going to be 6 inches of topsoil to be brought in and put on the site in the panel area. Is that correct, Jason?
Yeah, not necessarily that 6 inches needs to be brought in, but there needs to be 6 inches total. So, you know,
Well,
if there's only, if there's 4, you know, 3, they'll need to bring in another 3. Yeah, the minimum is 4, but lately on these projects, and I want to say on the RIDEM comments we recently received, they've been asking for 6 inches, these solar projects.
All right, now you were talking about 6 inches of what we call organic matter. Is that what we're talking
Of
about?
topsoil, yeah, loam or
Topsoil,
topsoil, right?
So how does that get analyzed? How does somebody go out there and say, well, there's 3 inches now? Who makes that determination? That's your job?
That's on the contractor.
I'm sorry, the contractor, is that Centrica we're talking about, or we're talking about
Ultimately, yeah. I mean, it's
are we talking about a whoever is actually building the project?
right. Whoever's building it. I mean,
All right,
ultimately, it's on the applicant's responsibility, but that would be the contractor who's building it who would be documenting that.
All right, so that might be, Deb, that might be one of our questions for the planning board is how do they determine that they've got 6 inches or 4? I'm not trying to put numbers in your mouth that are not requirements, but you're indicating that it's likely that DM is going to be saying we want 6 inches. So how would that get determined? Because to me, that's a huge way to absorb moisture. If you've got 6 inches of non-compacted topsoil with grass growing on it, I would think that you could absorb, I don't know, it's not my bailiwick, but you might get a 1 inch gentle rain and not a bit of it runs off the site. So to me, that's an important thing to have sufficient topsoil and to have everything nice and light and fluffy so that it can absorb that water. So anyway, Deb, why don't we try to put that into some kind of a note that I'll get off to the planning board. Thanks.
I would also think that the topsoil would be overplanted with grass or meadow. So I would assume that would also help with the water retention. And
Oh, certainly.
at least
Yes.
6 inches for that to take. So I'm assuming that would be something, Jason, that would be part of Centrica's plan.
Yes, yeah, and planting is, that's on the master plan
Yeah,
set that's been submitted already. Yeah.
All right. Anybody else got any questions on any of the vegetation, trees, grass, or anything? Soil.
Yeah.
The next item on my list was the easement ownership, and I know I participated in that meeting with the land trust, little workshop thing we had to go over. I think at that point, both sides were just kind of looking to each other out, trying to figure out how we're going to get to what entails of what's going to happen with the part of land not being used by the Lord point, which is and then the entire project is inherited by the land trust. So, and there were a lot of stuff right there that Jolie was going to get back to the land trust on that, and this is kind of out of my in the Conservation Commission area, but I just want to know, is that progressing? Is there I have no idea if they're planning on having anything to present to the planning board next Wednesday, or whether this is something they're seeing more long range. Does either of you have any comments on that?
I know that Joelle Rocha has been going back and forth with the land trust. I haven't been part of that conversation, but they are actively engaged.
Frankly, I didn't hear all of that, but if the answer is that it's being worked on, it's not done yet, that's, I just want to know the status. So that's,
It's being worked on, yeah.
okay. All right. All right. Anybody just jump in. I don't want to be the only one talking, but I do have a list, so I'm working down it. So jump in anytime. All right, so roads and trails. My question was, what permitting is needed to widen the road? And if, you know, to come down into that area, and it's going to go from what they're saying it's 8 feet wide now, and it's going to go to what, 15 feet or 20 feet? I saw on another project where the apparently the fire chief was requiring fire marshal or someone is requiring a 20-foot road around the perimeter of the solar field. I guess that's for maneuvering purposes. What size road is this going to be then again?
It's going to vary. So it'll be 15 feet down the hill, and then we're going to narrow to 12 feet between the wetlands to reduce the wetland impact.
Okay, so is there any, so there's not any culvert or anything there really, that's already
Right.
filled.
Right.
Okay. So so is the other one is just, I'm trying to understand it still. When the condo units were created, there was units 1, 2, and 3, and they shared a common interior road system, which is certainly being disrupted with this project. And when we had the site walk, at least according to my notes, asking my questions was, it seemed to come out that it's understood that unit 3 is not developable. And I'm not sure if that's really true or was what was intended or not, but can either one of you comment on that or tell me who should comment on that as to whether or not there needs to be any kind of provision for a roadway now or in the future from coming through unit 1 to get all the way back to unit 3?
Yeah, so I don't think the comment was that it's not developable, just that there's no intention to develop it. And so the access to unit 3 will be this. You can see the dashed lines here. This is just a grass trail, and that's all that the owner of unit 3 needs to get back there. He just takes an ATV or whatever back there. So there's the grass trail, routes around the array. I'll zoom out, routes around the array, and then connects back to the existing trails. And then you can follow that to get back to unit 3.
So that's like is it a permanent agreement? Is that something that's going to be in writing in deeds or some kind of understanding between those parts? The reason I'm asking is, well, one of the reasons I'm asking is about the land trust itself, and that's one of their concerns was to be able to come in this way and access the existing land trust properties to the rears. It would be a real help to them, I know. And I'm not trying to, so I know that stuff is getting negotiated, outside of your control possibly. But if this is going to, I guess my question is this 8-foot path, this is all that this individual is ever going, that for unit 3 is ever going to expect to have coming across unit 2?
Right, that's my understanding as of now. Yeah, and that would be, I believe, as honored. Right.
All right.
Yeah, and then I can't speak to the land trust. That's
I'm trying to separate that part out, but Deb, that would be just one of our things. I think that it's our understanding that this 8-foot path is all that unit 3 owner would expect ever in the future. Okay. All right. Then my next item I had was solar performance. And I noticed, I mean, I'm sure this has to do with a checklist that you had to, go through. the master plan narrative, there was somewhere in there was an item 10, energy efficiency. And I think the comments might have been back that it's, you know, it's solar, so it's already energy efficient or whatever. But at least the Conservation Commission, we've been very interested in getting our solar projects highly efficient. So we wanted to know what was being done to make this a more energy efficient solar project, so that you're with the same amount of panels or whatever, you gain the most amount of electricity, so that somewhere else we don't have to tear up a site and put in solar because this one's not working at its best efficiency. I asked the question about tracking panels out there, and no, there was no one there that could say whether you had ever looked into that or not. You were going to, I believe, provide information to the planning board about the incident light rated efficiency and various things in the site configurations to maximize the efficiency. And I would assume that you would be supplying some type of product information to show the planning board what kind of panels you're using and what their efficiency is compared to other panels and so forth, to show that you're making efforts to get this project up to its maximum possible efficiency.
That's right. Yeah, we would generally provide that stuff at preliminary if they ask for it. But yeah, I mean, I can tell you that when the project started, you know, back in 2018, we were looking at 345 watt panels, and the latest round was using a mix of 370 and 440 watt panels. So it is getting as much as you can with the smaller footprint.
So you're already designed your project with what you think is the highly efficient panels.
That's right.
And you mentioned two different types of panels. Could you just real quick explain why you would have one that's 370 and one that's 440 instead of all 440 as a for instance?
That's
I mean,
maybe Colleen can answer that. That's an electrical design question. Well, if Colleen isn't prepared to answer that, I can speculate, but I won't speculate if Colleen can answer that. The mix of panels, Colleen.
It seems reasonable to assume that they'll be as efficient as they can, because that's to the benefit of the contractor and the benefit of Centrica. So I'm assuming that it's going to be as efficient as you can provide in conjunction with National Grid. And they'll assume that have something to do with it. Not as concerned about that. The tracking panels, I think, are interesting. However, they're also more maintenance unfriendly. So I think they'll probably do a balance on that. But it does seem to me that, Jason, that your company is trying to be as efficient as possible as far as the solar energy extracted.
Well, certainly, yeah. I mean, nobody's going to leave anything on the table if they,
right,
unless there's a reason for it. I mean, it all comes down to it. You know, it's an economic balance of, you know, the more power a panel can produce, the more expensive that panel is, right? So it's a
also how much the National Grid will accept.
In that as well, yeah.
So I know by asking questions of various solar applicants, I've been able to kind of create a better understanding overall of what the industry is and how it works. So that's part of the reason I asked the question and why I asked about tracking panels, because something like 90% of the panels installed in the United States for the last few years, we're up somewhere well over 80%. The last, since 2019 at least, are all tracking panels, and they're 30% more efficient than the same panel not tracking. And there's, from all the things I was able to get from the federal lab that does oversees this, does the research on it, the cost-wise, they're equivalent to putting more panels in by using a less of a footprint. And this is just nationally, not in the Northeast where everything's so much more expensive and so much more difficult to build with. The tracking panels is the standard. And that's what I just can't, I'm still trying to put together the pieces of why we wouldn't be going after tracking panels here. What is it about Southern '30s on that?
Hi, Colleen DiBenedetto from Centrica. Tracking panels at this point are not.
Right.
Colleen, we can't hear you. Can you turn your volume up? There.
How do I turn the volume? I don't see a button for that.
If you just put your face close to the microphone, maybe that will help.
Can you hear me better now?
Yes.
Okay. Tracking panels are not at this point in Centrica's business model. We have been installing fixed panels on all our projects. I think we haven't really looked at a cost comparison for that, but can say that the capital expense, I'm sorry, not the capital, the operational expense is very different than fixed panels. And that's why we chose this technology for our projects.
So if I can summarize that, if I'm understanding you right, you're saying it's to get the same amount of electricity, it's going to cost more money?
Generally speaking, yes. It's the operational and maintenance costs that are much higher for tracking systems.
So it's just something different here in this part of the country, or something that the method that's used in most of the country just doesn't work here, or something like that.
Yeah, I work primarily in the Northeast, so I can't comment on the rest of the country. I can say that I have seen a small tracking system out at the Laurel Lane Golf Course in Kingston. I think it's less than 500 kW.
Okay. That's over in South Kingstown?
Yeah, it's in Uscapog.
Okay, I'm going to have to go by there and take a look at that. All right, just as I say, I'm keep feeling for this, because it's getting the highest efficiency is a great way to reduce the footprint or make more electricity. So that's why we're asking. Anybody else got a question on that?
No.
I was going to make a comment. The engineers that are putting a solar array on my farm, I asked them about that. They answered me in one word: maintenance.
Okay. Okay.
Basically.
Well, I'm sure they have some reason. All right. All right. So the next item I had on my list was a fence, and we talked about the getting away from the chain link fence and going with something that just disappears a whole lot more. And that I sent some information on the kind of farm fence that is used on other solar projects. And I'd like some feedback on that. Are you looking into that? This is something that's pretty important to the Conservation Commission. These, frankly, when I go past the other solar projects that you can see from the highway, which this is not one of those, the look to me, boy, this looks terrible. So, uh, that's would be great if you come up with one of these other systems with a farm tag fence with a black coating that you barely see for a solution. So what since our conversation, what have you done about that?
Yeah. So you make a good point first. I mean, you can't see this from the street anyway. But we did run that fence by the fire marshal, and he says that is not up to code. That what's required, as we mentioned in the field, is a non-climbable fence, and that sample fence that you sent is not considered non-climbable.
All right, who is the fire marshal?
That's Ronnie Sposato.
Okay. And so is he quoting from the code, or does he just have discretion to make that decision on his own?
The fire chief, I'm sorry. There is there's a code. There's the fire district interpretation of it.
All right, so it's a fire district's interpretation. Okay, I just wanted to understand. Can you tell me what you have tips? It's we're talking about. Are we talking about
I can cite it for you if you'd like. It's Rhode Island Fire Code 11.12.3.3 security barriers.
Okay.
And the Ashaway Volunteer Fire Association states that that fence must have a design which has been determined to be non-climbable.
And is that a letter from them?
It's a memo.
Okay.
Is that something that's in the packet going to the planning board?
No, we just received this, I think yesterday or today maybe.
Is that something that could be put in there to, I mean, because if I've got all that stuff, I mean, I'm not going to butt my head into a brick wall on it. But I'm just trying to nail that down, because it really makes a difference in appearance. And, they've got their job to do. And if that's what they think it has to be, then we either have to deal with that, or we have to find a workaround with them. And it's not on you anymore.
That's right. And ultimately for the building permit, the fire marshal has to sign off on it.
Right. So
and they're going to be more concerned about safety than the appearance of the fence, of course.
Yeah, I understand that everybody's got their own approach to it, and that's what their job is. So is this memo something that you can share? I can't imagine why you couldn't.
Yeah, I don't know. I think Colleen was working on getting something in writing from Mr. Sposato. I don't know if we have anything yet. Colleen, is there anything that's coming today that I haven't seen yet?
No, nothing's come in yet. Our project manager had a conversation with Fire Chief Ronnie Sposato at the Ashaway Fire Department. And he provided our project manager with the documentation that Jason cited, and said that in his opinion, this is secondhand, that he considers the farm fence, the material, the cut and the link that you sent us, Harvey, he considers it to be climbable.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part.
He considers it to be climbable.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So anyway, I would say that then if we don't have that, let's put something in ours, Deb, to letter that I'll put out to the planning board to ask them to please require that and require a review of that. I'm not trying to butt heads with other officials trying to do their job, but I just said all along, we want to see why we can't have something that looks a whole lot better. And so I want to be sure that the planning board.
We're looking for options, Harvey. We're looking for fencing options.
Right. Well, anyway, if you could put something together and some scratch notes here and share them with me, then I'll be able to.
It's a copy of what you proposed, of the fencing you proposed.
Yeah, well, we can put our information in there before the board ready, and then we come back to the fire code 11.12.3.3 security barriers, and then that there is supposedly a memo from the fire chief interpreting that to mean it can't be climbable, and that something with 6-inch stays is considered to be climbable even with barbed wire on top. So that's where we want to get it to. And
Barbie,
yes.
it seems to me, I mean, the fence that you showed was actually very good looking, but there might be interesting fences like that that are not climbable without barbed wire on the top, because I think then you're injuring animals that are jumping it. So I would prefer certainly not to see barbed wire. And also, I think the fence is very nice, and perhaps if it is not, then chain link, but it wouldn't be climbable. So I think Ron has a good point, but there might be a fence that is a better look that would still solve both of your problems.
You might be able to get a 3-inch stay on, the vertical wires are 3 inches apart, and it would be capable that's not climbable. That's about the size of the opening in the chain link, in the little, the diamonds that you have in a chain link fence. So
I would think that's better if it's 3-inch. My concern is that 6-inch space, does that go all the way down to the ground?
no, the fence does not go to the ground. The fence is required by the ordinance to be start 6 inches off the ground. So if you
still does a 6-inch go, because the animals get their heads stuck in it. If it's 6-inch square, animal will get its head stuck in that fence.
Right. That's also true.
I've had that happen down the farm, Harvey.
Yeah, that's also true. But so the smaller, the 2-inch,
Smaller,
3,
we get that would be better.
it would solve both problems. Gary's right.
All right. Well, anyway, we're looking at, but if we can get eventually we end up with copies of all that stuff. I think if we got all the material to work with, we know what the fire chief says, we know what the electrical code says, we know what the fire code says, then we might be able to better look for these alternatives. It makes a huge difference on where it is visible, and this area is going to have. There is going to be public use of the area right up around it early on, because the land trust is going to have management of that land around it. So that's all. I'm just trying to move things in the right direction. I'm also looking at this on other projects, so I'm trying to move it along. So I appreciate you're getting down into the details there, and thank you, Barbara and Gary, for your comments as well. We're getting close, I think. Decommissioning.
Yeah.
The only question I could come up with, I'd love to hear some others, is there any part of the solar project components that you will not remove upon decommissioning?
No,
That was a no?
that's a no, yes.
Okay, that's all you need to say. Anybody else have any questions on decommissioning?
I would assume that National Grid's telephone poles stay.
That's a
Good question.
Does anybody know, do you know the answer to that?
Currently, in our decommissioning estimates, we do not include removal of the utility poles. The equipment on the poles we include, however, the utility poles we have not included in our estimates.
Now, most of those poles are on unit 1, right?
Yes.
All of the poles are on unit 1, right?
All of the poles will be on unit 1? I thought there was going to be a couple of them on unit 2.
No, you're right. I'm sorry. I misspoke. All of National Grid's poles are on unit 1, but there are a
Okay.
couple of the solar-owned poles on unit 2.
So the wires will be removed off those and the poles will still be there? I mean, imagine the wire's pretty valuable. That's gotta be pretty heavy duty wire, I would think.
Right, I would think so. I think Colleen's stuck on mute. Yeah,
Would it be a big
that would
deal
be.
for
I'm sorry.
those? Would it be a big deal for those to get removed, the wire and the poles that's on unit 2 before it goes to the land trust?
We can include that in our decommissioning estimate, yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right, and the last one I had was reforestation. And I know we had some discussions and with Joel as well that time that the land trust in the field, right? What is the field right now, at least, and stuff? Very interested in having something like a wildflower meadow, and not. I mean, hasn't been forested in probably 75 years or something, maybe a lot longer than that, and not trying to bring that back into a forest. Is there a forester that's going to be involved in this project?
That's a kind of a preliminary plan, detail to get into that level of detail. So I know I think Joel's been talking to the land trust, I believe, about that to some point, but I have not been involved in that conversation.
So where I was trying to understand was if there is a forester already going to be working on this project in some manner, because the planning board's going to want to see some amount of detail about reforestation. Mm-hmm. Possibly there could be conversation between the forester and the land trust for the forester, basically as a professional, give them some advice as to whether any of this area really makes sense coming under their ownership for them to have forest planted or to have the grassy open space that I think they would prefer in majority of that area, or whatever. So they might need a little bit of guidance, but they're going to be the eventual owners. So it's important that it fits well with their mission to manage that space. So, but the answer right now is that you don't know if there'll be a forester brought in for the project at all.
At this point, I don't know either way at this point.
All right, so yeah, we just might want to raise that as an issue, that if there is a requirement for a forester for somehow to be involved, that get the land trust heavily involved, because they're going to be the eventual owner and the manager of it, and it needs to end up in, not putting in a bunch of trees that they're going to have to take right back out or something.
I'm sure. Yeah, it makes sense.
All right. Have you, Jason and Colleen, do you have any questions for us? I'm taking that as a no.
Colleen?
I have no questions, Harvey, but thank you very much for allowing us to participate tonight.
You're most welcome. So what we're going to try to do is what we have to do as a Conservation Commission. The planning board has their strict schedules. They have all kinds of legal requirements to get the projects reviewed in a certain time period and so forth. So the Conservation Commission just has to be the one that jumps through the hoops. And we will not have our next meeting until I think 8 days after the planning board meeting.
Yep.
So what I'm going to try to do is get our thoughts and questions and recommendations. It's not that much more from what we already had from the site walk. We already had most of our issues in mind when we had the site walk. So, but I'll talk with Deb. I'll try to get this, her notes and stuff, so we can get it kind of together. And I'm going to put it out. And the intent is to reflect the thoughts of the Conservation Commission, and we'll try to have that in to the planning board in advance of their meeting. This is Thursday.
It'll be
and they're meeting Wednesday. Typically,
I noticed that the packets are ready, so I don't know.
Yeah,
if you can get-
that's what we always run into. The packets, they got to go out. They need their time, and then we're going to be coming in after that. And Al's going to be yelling at me again for getting not getting in, but we're moving it as fast as we can. We want to have our thoughts before the planning board. We don't want to sit it out and not have our thoughts involved. So I will try this weekend to get that put together and out to the planning board. Hopefully I'll have it sitting there Monday morning when Jim comes into his office.
Okay.
So, all right.
Mhm.
All right. I think we don't have any other questions. Anybody got anything to say? Please speak up right now. I'm happy to hear from you.
Harvey, would you be able to copy Jason and I on your comments, planning board?
Say that again.
Would you be able to copy Jason and I on your comments to the planning board?
Yes, that's a courtesy. I certainly will do. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I'm sure if you didn't get it from me, you'd be getting it from Jim anyway, as best he could. But it'll be quicker if I do it. So I'll try to do that. All right. Why don't we call it an evening?
right.
Let's see.
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
Hi, this is Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road.
Yes, go ahead, Joe.
First of all, I want to thank you for what you guys do for our town. I certainly appreciate your time. I like to listen to these meetings because I can learn more about our town, on what's going on. The last 2 or 3 meetings, it's been very difficult to get into these meetings. The last Conservation Commission meeting, I finally get in at 7:45 p.m. And it was only because of the hard work that Bob did to give me a passcode to call in. The last 2 days, I've seen 3 different agendas for tonight's meeting. One said for phone call-ins to call the town's technical person. And I know we just hired someone this past week. Today, Bob Marvel, I'm sure, worked very hard to try to straighten this out. And he finally gave me a passcode so that I could call in. And I called both numbers 3 different times. And all 3 times I was told something to the effect, the system is unable to accept phone calls. So finally, after, I don't know, 3 or 4 times trying that, my wife said, because we have one laptop that we share, and my wife said she wasn't using the laptop, why don't you try Zoom? Well, I never used Zoom before. So she showed me how to get on, and Bob was kind enough to send the information, and I clicked on. What had happened was at 7:16 tonight, when I decided to try Zoom, I went back to look at the 2 agendas that were on our website, and they're both gone. So now I don't have that option. Unfortunately, again, Bob had emailed me that information so that I was able to get on. But as I said, this is the second Conservation Commission, and this past Tuesday with the Land Trust, I was able to listen to the meeting, but I was not able to communicate. And I understand that it's difficult with the Zoom, and that's why I'm glad that I think Bob had suggested that we have these training sessions, because when you listen to a meeting like this, again, which I like to do, and you hear of all these technical questions and these technical things that we're going to accomplish for the good of our town. But to me, a simple thing like a resident wanting to call in to listen to the meeting, it's so difficult to do that. And I don't know how we fix that. I don't have the answers, but it's just, I've spent the last 2 days, part of the third day, very frustrating trying to get the information. Deb was kind enough to forward to me an email with some information. And for some reason, this is the only, I've listened to the zoning and all the other meetings. This is the only one that has asked me for a passcode. And it asks for a numeric passcode on your phone. And as you know, the passcode to get onto Zoom is a combination of letters and numbers. So I think that's part of the problem, but I don't have the answers. I certainly could not do this myself, but I just think going forward, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And I'm not criticizing you. I'm just pointing the information out so that we can improve this for the future. I don't have the answers. I really don't.
Hey, Joe, Bob Marvel here. Can I respond to that, Harvey?
Sure.
Please, I'm sorry.
We've been having technical issues with Zoom and with various accounts, and I think, the problem unfortunately has been exacerbated by the fact that we were without an IT director for a while. Although Chris was willing to help, we can't really ask too much of him as he's on a different job. But now that Jeff Frenette is with us, I have offered my assistance to Jeff in any way that we can to resolve these issues. I'll tell you one of the issues, one of the main reason why the town council meetings and the planning board meetings and the zoning board meetings all go more smoothly is because they're using the town's enterprise account for Zoom, and it gives you a lot more functionality and a lot more options to be able to make things smoother. So that's one of the things that we want to address rather quickly to resolve some of these issues. So I understand your frustration. It's definitely not anybody's fault here on either of these commissions. It's just a matter of dealing with technology and, the limitations sometimes of the free accounts with the technology. So we'll get there, but just, we're doing our best.
I just realized that we went over 40 minutes and we didn't get cut off. So they must have given us, we got a bonus this time.
Yeah, I actually, when I started the recording, I got a message saying that the 40 minutes limit was extended or removed. I don't know, Jeff, did you make some magic happen?
No, Zoom is still allowing extended time. So okay. in COVID, they're still actually allowing for it. So, and I didn't catch your name. Was it Jim or Joe? Joe. This is Jeff Frenette. I'm brand new to the town, but grew up in Hopkinton. I'm here now for the residents, all the constituents of Hopkinton. I'm going to give you 110% to make sure that we work through these issues. I'm going to help all the boards and commissions make sure that people like you don't have these problems. If you do have an issue like this, feel free to pick up the phone, call the town, ask for me, and I can help you work through these things. That's what I'm here for. Technology is here to make your lives easier, not make them harder. So feel free to pick up the phone and call me, and I will try to help you.
Well, I certainly appreciate that, and welcome to the town. And I just want to make it clear, I'm not pointing fingers at anyone or blaming anyone. I just want to see that it's improved for the future. because, as most of you are aware, I listen to every town council meeting, every zoning board meeting. I listen to all of the meetings, and I've never had any other problems getting in. It's never asked me for a passcode. And to Bob's point, maybe it's the issue of using the town's Zoom process versus a different Zoom. And again, I'm not a technical whiz, so I could not do this, but I just want to see that it gets to be better, because the other three meetings, there's never been any issue. It's very clear in the agendas what the passcode is if you need it, and so forth. So it's only been this last couple of weeks, and I think it started with the agenda, and I'm sure part of it is because of not having our IT person also, but just moving forward.
Yeah, we'll take care of it.
I'm sure it'll get better.
Don't take the agendas off the site until the day after the meeting, because it's at night when people are looking for the copies, so they can get the dial-in information.
Now, when you say take the
I
agenda
spoke
off the
to-
site, are you talking about the Secretary of State website or the town?
Because it's always there. What
Yeah.
it is on our town website.
Okay.
No, that's not the case, because I always go to the town's website and I look on the meetings and agendas, and this particular meeting agenda was never on our town's website. Both of the you were kind enough to send me one, but the two agendas I referred to were on the Secretary of State's website. And I spoke to Lisa about this quite a while back, and she said typically what will happen with the Secretary of State's site, which is very, very difficult to find any information, but once a meeting starts, after a few minutes, as I said, 7:16, that agenda is gone on the Secretary of State's website. So what I'm going to do from this point on is, when I see an agenda on the Secretary of State's website, I'm going to print that so that I'll have a hard copy if there's any questions to go back to, because it was never on our town's meetings and agenda. It was just under the upcoming meetings, which it showed them.
Okay.
Yeah, Joe, that's, I think, another issue where in the past, the meeting agendas and the meeting minutes afterwards would always be provided to Chris, the IT director, and he would get them, he'd put them on the website. And so in the transition, some of that stuff fell through the cracks, but our hope is that we'll be able to, rework the website a little bit so all of that information is not only more available and more readily available to residents, but also easier for the commission's secretaries to get data to.
Because putting things in
Yeah, absolutely, because
websites.
I know the amount of time that you guys spend just from what I've seen, and to add, more of a burden to you isn't fair to the volunteers that are, the Harvey and Deb and other people and Gary that, dedicate their time to the town. And you hate to add the other burden. I'm sure Jeffrey will get this straightened out, and hopefully, as Deb and I have spoken about before, we'll be able to meet at either the middle school or meet in the town council chambers as things approved with the vaccines. So. But thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Great.
All right. Are we got anything else? Any item? I think we're ready to say good night. Want to go and Gary, you, and I don't see, Lydia's not here now? She was for a while.
I'm still here.
Oh, okay. I'm not seeing your name on anything. So, okay. Well, all right. Have a motion to adjourn.
Make the motion, we adjourn.
I say,
Okay.
Happy birthday.
yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. All in favor? Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
All right. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Hey, Jeff, can you give me a call and we'll finish up the recording thing?
Absolutely.
Great. Thank you.
Bye.
All right.
Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
Bye-bye.
Bye.